She's shy.
Well, thank you for that, Christy. Thank you for bringing us into the room with the sound of the gong. It's beautiful. Welcome, everybody. My name is David McLeod. I'm your life mastery coach, and we are here today with Soul Empowerment with myself, Christy Borst, Nancy Stevens, and Sarah Jane. And we are going to talk today about something that I think is going to it's going to be a very interesting conversation, and it's a topic that we've been kind of building up to share for a while now. But before we begin, I'd just like to give everybody a chance to introduce themselves, and I'm going to go around my screen the way I see you. And first up on my screen is Christy. Good morning, Christy. Welcome.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. I've lost, okay, there, I couldn't find the window. So I am joining you from Maine, and I am an intuitive energy healer and spiritual guide, really able to kind of work to help people process repressed emotions or emotions that may be kind of stored in the physical body and creating an unease that can manifest as disease, and also just helping people to get to that next best version of themselves. And I love to kind of share these life hacks with the Soul Empowerment team because we really move forward together and not ahead of one another.
Beautiful. Thank you, Christy. And next on my screen is Sarah Jane.
Hello from England, and it's evening here as we're recording this. I work with sound energy, so actually having the singing bowl at the beginning was lovely. I have one of my own. I work with sound energy, but my sound energy on the whole tends to be toning, so the use of the voice. And I help support people with the inner child, and which our program, our topic is cell memories, so cellular memory. And I do support people with tapping into that. So it's not necessarily a physical memory that we have, but it's something that is deeper held within our bodies. So again, I think, sort of a topic that I work with a lot when I'm working one-on-one with people. And I'm great. It's lovely that we're going to be having this conversation today.
Beautiful. Thank you, Sarah. And last but by no means least, Nancy Stevens.
Well, hello there. I'm Nancy Stevens, and since we're all sharing location today, I'll just say I live in Nashville. Nashville, Nancy. That's an easy one to remember. I work, I know, it's one of those days. I work in the self-care and well-being area. That's my calling is to empower mostly women to really own and take care of themselves, whether it's physical, spiritual, or emotional. I do that through mind-body classes, breathing, and well-being coaching. So I enjoy being a part of this group here and all the learning that was to share and have.
Well, thank you, Nancy. I appreciate your sharing that. Mm-hmm. And so for those of you who are here on the live show, I'd just like to invite you to feel free to put your comments into the chat. And, if you have questions or anything, that's great too. And also, we'll talk a little bit about the fact that this is being recorded. But let's just talk a little bit about our topic. Everything that happens to us, whether it's positive, negative, painful, or pleasure, has an impact on our holistic being. If we're able to process these events in a healthy way, then their energy will tend to move on, leaving us with a somewhat dim recollection of what happened. But if an event is extremely intense or traumatic, and we don't deal with it in a way to bring about appropriate healing, the energy can actually be trapped in the body, right down to our very cells. And so what happens is this energy can become, if we don't deal with it, we don't do something with it, it can become very toxic and can lead to all kinds of negative consequences for our lives, for our health. And so we may experience these consequences in the form of mental or emotional issues, such as anxiety or depression, or possibly even a disease that manifests physically, and even such bad ones as cancer or diabetes. So our purpose today is to talk a little bit about how we can bring ourselves into awareness of these problems so that we can bring about powerful healing to make our lives so much better. And so I'm just going to open up the floor here after I just gave that little introductory bit. What's coming up for people? What would you like to share first?
Okay, if the other's not particularly sure about what's to share, I'm actually going to take it. Can I take it a bit deeper, David?
Absolutely.
Because thinking about it, and I was only thinking about it earlier today, but I've also had a conversation with somebody else just recently about the inner child, but also accepting the fact that we have the DNA of our parents in us. And so therefore, we have within us the energies of some of their traumas and experiences that they went through. They obviously have the DNA of their parents before them. So it's not necessarily just from what is in our life. And it can go back to preconception within our life, but it also has potential that there's cellular and memory level energies from the DNA that has been passed down to us by our families. And so it's more than what's gone on in our own life. Now, I know that may appear quite deep, but I think what we witness as children can be learned behaviors from the adults, which is learned behaviors from them as children with the adults. So there's a lot of stuff going on. And if we can get to that level of cellular memory and start to heal that hurt, that trauma, that pain, those experiences, especially from when we were children, because I think it's very difficult for a child to understand, and it's saying circumstances outside your control. Children don't understand that concept. Whereas as an adult, we do understand that concept. At what stage we get to the point of understanding varies for us all. But so there's an awful lot to this, and an awful lot of levels to this, but we can work through it and support ourselves and each other through.
Right. Yeah. Well, not only are we influenced by the DNA of our parents and our grandparents and our great-grandparents and so forth, but there are a lot of people who believe that our own experience that we have in this physical life may also be impacted by activities or experiences that we may have had in previous lives. Now, I don't know about any of you. I know for myself, I've never had a personal lived or felt experience of a past life. Maybe somebody else has here. So some of us who are living in this current life may not be able to resonate with that idea. Christy, I think you may have had some experience with this. Can you want to share a little bit about that?
Yeah, so there's a couple things I'd like to share about this. First of all, I want to kind of applaud Sarah for what she shared, and also to really, I think, acknowledge that this is really a powerful time that we're in, because we're becoming more aware of all of this stuff. And a phrase that Spirit shared with me a few years ago is, awareness equals the power of choice equals the power to change. Until we see something, then we may not even know we have a choice of how to behave or what to believe. And then once we see choices, then we can change the choices that we've made, maybe unconsciously. But in that, kind of power of this now, I really believe there are a lot of ancestral programs, ancestral beliefs, ancestral DNA that our generation and the younger generations have come here to change. So for many people, the things that are challenging are actually our doorways to greatness and opportunity. As far as past lives, yes, I have seen myself in past lives, and I've actually recognized people that I've had other lifetimes with. But I think one of the most powerful things I want to share about the reality of our, existence beyond this one lifetime, that fallacy of you only have one life to live, really, is that just to give a couple of examples of healing a wound that happened in another lifetime. So I have one friend who has had chronic lung issues, and we went and took a girls' day, and we went on this drive, and we got to this place about maybe 2 hours north of where I live in Maine, and we just wanted to pull over. So we pulled over, and we had packed a lunch, and we sat down at a picnic table, and she started, coughing, and I was like, okay, well, will you let me work on you? And she said yes. And so I started, doing energy work with her. And when I got to her back, sometimes I get visuals, sometimes I just have a knowing. And I had a knowing, almost like King Arthur with the sword and the stone, that there was a sword in her back. And I just kind of pulled that, non-visual, in this reality sword out of her back, kind of in her upper lung. And she felt it. And from that point forward, she was having less problems with her lungs. So she kind of resonated with that because she's always had this fear of people, that phrase, stabbing her in the back, not being true to her. So, so life kind of gives us these clues. For her, it was that feeling that she can't trust people. And that was really rooted in another lifetime and carried forward with her.
Very, very interesting. Yeah. Nancy, what's your perspective on this part of our topic?
Well, I have experienced energy work myself. It's my sister actually. She has done some deep work, and she has gone back and was able to see her past lives. It was very powerful, like you said, Christy. Some people that were in her life now in the present were meant to be where her relationship of meeting them was meant to be, so she could go back and heal and know the past. Um, there's, it's just very, although it's intangible, it's so very compelling. I mean, she's been able, like you, to move into that space and to know, like, oh, this is why some of these things are happening to me, or why I have these health issues or whatnot, because of my past or my past lives, my ancestry. So I am very interested and fascinated by that. And I've had some energy work done. I had an ancestral energy clearing done on me, where my practitioner was able to go back and clear things that were sort and sift what was mine, what was belonged to my, generations of parents, grandparents, great grandparents, etc. So it's very real, and like you said, it's hard to explain why we have what we perceive to be a genetic or a health issue in heart, lungs, or digestion, and to go back and find that the some of that was due to ancestral or childhood wounding. It's very real, but it can be a struggle for some who aren't in that. They want to have that symptom diagnosed and get treated without needing to work on their inner landscape or do some contemplative work or work with a practitioner. And I know for me, going into and getting help and guidance is in fact a means to heal. And I do believe that about the generation now that they're here to show and teach us. I can see that with our 4 sons, of what we've learned, my husband and I have learned from them and what they're doing in the world. So yeah, we are in a very unique time of learning and growth and releasing.
I think this is a fascinating topic, to be honest. Even though, as I said, I haven't really had the personal felt experience of some of this, it just resonates as true for me. And I do think that, well, I'm not contradicting you, Christy. I do believe we all have one life, but it's an extremely long life. It's infinitely long, and it's not just limited to this physical experience that we have here in this. We may have multiple physical experiences. Some of us may only have one physical experience, but that doesn't mean our life ends just because the body no longer exists. The life just continues. Consciousness goes on forever. So there's that. But the other thing that I wanted to mention was, Nancy, you talked about how we just want to treat the symptoms. We want to look at the problems that we have and then just fix them. We're always looking for a magic pill or a special kind of treatment that's just going to take the pain away and it's all gone and never have to worry about it again. And so much of our so-called science is based on that very idea. We look at the symptoms, we try to figure out where the symptoms came from. We might make a correlation between some activity and some symptoms or not. We may even, in very rare cases, find a cause and effect relationship. And when we do that, by the way, when we find a cause and effect relationship, usually the kind of healing that we can get is much, much deeper than if we just try to fix a symptom. But anyway, I think my belief is all of us can heal physical expressions of these. I don't like to use the word trauma because a lot of stuff isn't really trauma. It's just injury or pain or something that happened in our life. There may be trauma there, but trauma is pretty rare in reality. But anyway, something happened. We had a reaction to it in an emotional way, in a spiritual way, in a non-physical way. And we maybe made up a story about ourselves as a result of that action. And that story we made up created an energetic scenario in which we were stifling ourselves and preventing ourselves from showing up fully in order to allow that energy to be expressed. And consequently, we may have held that energy in our body somewhere, and it may have worked its way down right into I call it the issues in the tissues. You've heard me say that before, I think. But it gets right down into the very cells of our being. And when they're in the cells, we may, up here in our minds, forget about them. And we may think we're just living a good life. We're doing everything that we can to be the best people we can be. But sooner or later, those little issues in the tissues start to talk back to us one way or another. And so we have the manifestation of a disease or discomfort or pain or something, whatever it might be. And that is when we now have the opportunity to start awakening these memories, if you like. And that's where the work begins. Now, Sarah, I know you do a lot of this kind of work with people. I've had the experience of it myself with your toning. And I know that one of your favorite processes, or certainly one of my favorite, is toning a person's name and helping. I know when I had that experience, it was like I could feel my body waking up somehow. There was something magical about it. I cannot explain it on the physical world, but maybe you can help us understand it, how it works.
For me, because the question I always ask is this the name your mother called you as a child? Because like myself, so many people have changed or varied their name. And for me, that is very important. And that's something that I learned from experience of being aware that I changed my own name. And when somebody went and toned Sarah for me, it felt wrong. And it was just like, and one of the individuals actually knew the story. And so they went and they actually toned Sarah Jane because I'd been Jane as a baby. And it made a massive difference. It could be felt because personally, I genuinely believe we choose our name and we guide our parents. Therefore, it is the name we have chosen for ourselves. And I've had people who don't like their name, and because they put their hand up when I've gone and given a talk and they've said, yes, I'd like to experience it. And I'm thinking, why did you put your hand up if you don't want me to tone it because you don't like it, you know? But afterwards they've said, actually, that feels so much more comfortable. There appears to be an energy about that, because I believe the energy that is coming through is pure, unconditional love and an energy of acknowledgement, acknowledging the whole of who you are. So your comment about it felt like everything within you was awakening. Yes, because I feel when we are hurt and we're being told, no, that's not good enough, you're not good enough, whatever, we try and compartmentalize those aspects of ourselves or get rid of those aspects of ourselves because that aspect isn't liked by others. And those aspects are still there, whether they're on the periphery or they're that stuck cellular memory, whatever, however you wish to term it, it's still there. And when I tone somebody's name, what appears to happen is that whole person, it's the whole person that's being acknowledged and feels that love. And love is the greatest healer. It really is. And so if what I bring is the energy of love, then wonderful.
Beautiful. Thank you, Sarah. Now, Christy, I know you mentioned a moment ago that you also do energy work, and you talked about this King Arthur's sword in this woman's back. How does all of this resonate for you with this idea of somehow this energy getting trapped in the body and in the tissues and in the cells? What kind of work do you do with people to help them, release that energy and find their own healing?
So kind of as Nancy said, I love that phrase, the inner landscape. We have to understand what our inner landscape is. Do we have a vibe to thrive, or do we have a vibe that really is taking our body away from wellness and our spirit away from inner peace? And I wanted to kind of revisit what I said about my friend, and that is, yes, I did symbolically lift this energy of this wound from her, but I also gave her that awareness that she is vibrating, or was vibrating, this lack of safety in her own body and this lack of being safe with other people. So once she could see that, then she had more power to decide whether or not that was how she wanted to live. So part of what I do is helping people see that woundedness on a non-physical level, whether it's something that happened to them. And you mentioned you don't like to use the word trauma. Really, all of these wounds, if you will, come from our belief that we're not loved, or we're not good enough, or we're too much, whatever variation of that story there is.
Right. And so let me interject here. So in that sense, our wound really comes from ourself. It's self-inflicted in many ways.
And really, when the body creates illness, is trying to send us a message of what it is that is not in alignment with love within ourselves. And for example, lungs, a lot of it is almost literal. So what do we do with our lungs? We breathe. We take in life. We breathe the breath that everyone before us has breathed, and we also outflow our breath for everyone else. And so a lot of people with lung concerns have a wounding in their childhood where they felt they weren't loved. And, you know, we can look at life from strictly the humans around us, and sometimes, frankly, they suck at being parents. But we are always loved. We are love. We come from love. Our source, creator, God, whatever you call that energy that connects us, is love. It's part and parcel of our souls. So we can't not be loved.
Right.
So that's a big, that's a big part too, is as Sarah, I channel unconditional love from God's source, all that is. And when people feel that essence within themselves, they remember that part of themselves. So it's not like I'm totally giving them something other than things they haven't yet remembered.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, I like that. That's a beautiful way of putting it. Ultimately, I cannot heal you or anybody else. All I can do is maybe show you a way that you can heal yourself. Uh, but ultimately, the healing comes from the same place the wounding did. It comes
Right.
from within. And I really like that you mentioned that most of our wounding has to do with the beliefs that we make up as a result of something that happened. That is far more damaging than the original thing that happened in the first place, you know.
And I
Nancy, I
would
want
just like to, could I just share one more thing?
to.
I don't personally do past life readings, although sometimes that information comes in. But I think it is really a valuable thing for people to consider having done.
Right.
Because sometimes what comes forward does explain what we're struggling with now. And I think that, our souls are yearning to grow, yearning to experience more. And sometimes our lifetimes are 180 degrees different. So if something's happening in this lifetime, it may have been totally different in another lifetime. And that's why we chose this experience.
Sure. Yeah, beautiful.
So thank
So
you.
Nancy, I wanted to hear from you about your mechanism or your approach to helping people, get connected to that energy that's deep in their tissues to help them to heal.
Well, I guess my area that I'm continuing to work on and grow and develop is through I think Christy was a guest on my show. We talked about the chakra system. Um, working on I primarily work with my heart chakra, using that as a means to, work with, if I'm coaching a client or, working with them, really to sense and feel what may be beneath the surface that they're not able, that they're maybe are feeling, but don't have words to put it into words or can explain it. So that's my portal right now. I'll never forget. I was leading a class it was a mind body spirit class, and we were working with the chakras for people that were looking to get in better shape and lose weight. But one of the teachings was with the first and third chakra, and I learned a lot from that. But when I taught the material, those that it resonated with were just really blown away that what they thought was just a black and white issue with eating or overeating or not being able to control themselves stemmed from this deeper unhealed or blocked chakra that once they began, or then gave them some tools to work on that, shared with me that really began to open the door for them to process their relationship with eating, food, being in better and working on their relationship within themselves. So, like I said, I find all of this really fascinating. I feel the more each of us has the love for ourselves, or give ourselves permission or awareness to move into healing, all of that will begin to resonate at a higher frequency. It's really almost painful when you see people walking around that really appear to be struggling with mental health issues or just with physical issues that you know there's a lot more to it than that physical symptom, or you were just, you know, drew the bad luck of the draw. There's so much more to that. That needs it's our time to pull the curtain back and open that area for self-discovery and healing.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with that.
Mhm.
I think the way I like to work with people has to do with helping them get out of their heads and down into their body. One of the things that I have learned is if you can, like, let's say we start in the head and you tell me I got this story that I just can't get this job. Okay, whatever. It's a story, but it's based on a belief system. And what I get people to do is I say, okay, so you've got this belief that you can't get this job. Now, just bring your awareness down into your body. Where do you feel that? Where does that kind of land in your body? And it might be in your stomach. It might be in your heart. It might be in your chest. Maybe it's in your lower back on the right side. Maybe it's in your knee. It doesn't matter where it is. Something on your body is going to have a response to that belief system. And what I get people to do is bring their attention to that spot and say, okay, what's really happening down there? What is that spot of your body trying to tell you? And often it will reveal something about an old injury or an old wound that has nothing to do with, I'm not going to get that job, but maybe it boils down to something weaker, like, I'm not strong enough. I'm not good enough. I'm not smart enough. You see, it's going to come down to some belief about myself, not about the external thing that I've been worrying about. And when we can get down to that belief, then we can start to uncover where that came from. And that's where the healing can start to come. So my approach really is about taking a belief system that might be unconscious, uncovering that belief and saying, how does that belief show up in my life? Where are the ways in which these little shadows kind of sneak out and start behaving or misbehaving, as the case may be, and kind of sabotaging my life? When we can understand that, then we can see that most of what we're creating is strictly our own creation. And then we can take responsibility. And as Christy said at the beginning, once you've got the awareness, you can take the responsibility. Now you can make new choices. So that's kind of the way I approach things. It's a bit more, maybe it sounds a little more heady, but it is a kind of a logical approach, but involves, getting into the body, understanding what feelings and sensations and everything else that you've got, and then opening yourselves up to the truth. That's really what it's about. So I think the body never lies. The body is always going to tell you the truth. I mean, the message that you hear might be something that you have to imagine, but either you feel pain or comfort or whatever in your body. The body is simply a truth teller. So if you ever want to know the truth, get out of your head and get down into your body. That's kind of what I have been teaching people. And I think once you get to the body and you understand what the body is trying to tell you, then you can start paying closer attention to what your emotions and your spirituality and your mental state are trying to tell you. So you can bring all of these components together and start inquiring into your holistic nature to find the truth. Yeah, go ahead.
I'd love to share, you talk about headiness, and I really had to almost like unlearn some things in order to open up to the non-physical spiritual healing work I'm doing now, right? Because if you just ask for scientific proof or whatever, maybe it's not there. and the mind was something that my parents rewarded, right? That was the thing that you can excel at. But one of the things that I think is interesting to think about is that, you know, when we learned about atoms, which are part of our cells, right? We learned that there's that nucleus, and then there's the electrons and the protons that are kind of whirling around. And the fact of our bodies is that that physical matter, the neutron, the electron, and the proton, take up only, I think it's 0.3% of our being, and the rest is non-physical. So, you know, in that, you think of that atom and it's taking up this much space, but, you know, the nucleus is only this big. The rest of that space is energy. The rest of that space is emotions. The rest of that space is memories from this lifetime, other lifetimes. The other part is, you know, spiritual messages coming to us. The other part is, you know, messages from our parents. And so it's almost like an illusion to look at the physical and think that's the most important part.
Right. You're absolutely right. Yeah, I think that the number 0.3% seems high to me, actually. It doesn't really matter. Most of the universe is made up of empty, well, not empty, but it appears empty space. And it's actually just teeming with energy. You know, energy is everywhere. There's just nowhere you can look that there isn't some form of energy. So yeah, I think that it's an amazing thing when you think about it. And these, you're talking about physics now, and one of the most amazing things that I find is, as we're scientifically trying to find smaller and smaller and smaller particles, you know, somebody says, well, sooner or later we're going to find the fundamental particle, the one from which all other particles comes about. And I'm thinking, yeah, right, maybe not so much. Maybe you're looking in the wrong direction, you know. But the truth is, they never actually see particles. All they ever see is some signal, evidence, a trail, whatever you want to call it, that something was here, and they attribute that something to a particle. That's all they know. And furthermore, what they see is a signal of the past, because they never see it in the present moment. So that's kind of an interesting thing as well. You know, when we talk about the structure of the physical human body and all this kind of stuff, I think it's just good to remember that we're mostly made up of empty space, even though it appears very hard and, you know, like you can't pass through it or whatever. So anyway, fascinating stuff. Sarah, you look like you were ready to say something. I'm sorry, I think I
No. That's fine. I suppose I want to take us back a step, because talking about past life, and since a child, I remember on a number of occasions falling downstairs, and falling downstairs, always bouncing down on my backside, and really having bashed my coccyx, so much so that actually part of it's actually fused. So I've done, yeah, over the years with those falls,
Right.
I've done quite a bit of damage to myself.
Now,
And
are these events that actually happened, or are you?
oh yeah, no,
Okay.
no, they actually happened. Yeah, I remember as a child when we were living in one particular house, and then I remember in a couple of other houses that I've had, and then it happened here just after I'd had a craniosacral session. Craniosacral was very good at clearing stuff for me and causing clearing for me, and I've got a metal spiral staircase. It's an old fire escape that takes me upstairs, and I fell down it. And I didn't hit my head. I didn't break anything. I ended up with a bruise from here to here. Bruises on both legs bigger than my hands. My hands aren't very big, but it's big enough, you know, sort of. And it was just like, okay, how many times have I got to fall downstairs? What am I being told?
Mm.
And I'd got a couple of clients later in the day doing an Indian head massage with my elbow like that. There was no way I could do it. Doing the Reiki session, absolutely not a problem, because I hadn't really got to move for that, doing that. But it was just like, I got myself down the stairs and sort of sat on the floor, opened the Reiki channel, did some sound energy. I've got the tools, I use them.
Sure.
But I still walked down to the local shops, about half a mile away. So it's about a mile there and back.
Which shops are those? I'm sorry.
My local shops.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And it was, do you know what? I am not going to let the fact that actually some of this is quite painful. I am not going to let this stop me. And there became an awareness in a previous life, existence, whatever you want to refer to it as. I'd fallen downstairs. I wasn't that badly injured, but I had made people's life, including my own, a living hell because of the way I behaved for that incident and whatever I have no idea what the injuries were, but let's put it this way. I behaved in a way that made it considerably worse than it actually was.
Right.
And made everybody's life uncomfortable. And my whole thing was, I am not going to let this stop me. I am not going to be that person I was in that past life. I acknowledge that, and now I am taking control. I do not have to let this control my life. I'm not saying I haven't had any little trips down the stairs since, but they certainly haven't had the same effect. So, it's just one of those things. It's that acceptance. So sometimes in things that happen, as we've talked about in the previous program, if something comes at you 3 times, maybe you should listen. I don't know how many times, but I started as a child. So, sort of, it was just understanding that there was a message within my body from the past, that there was something for me to heal for something I'd been through and not dealt with very well.
Yeah.
And
so this is beautiful. I think there's a big lesson here that I want to just draw attention to. We can all benefit from the messages that are directed to us through our body. We may not always necessarily fully understand what that message is, and that's okay too. And it might take 2 or 3 or 4, or in my case, maybe 100 times before the message finally gets through. But when it does, all of a sudden, everything just becomes clear. And that's a beautiful experience. I know I've had that happen on a number of occasions in my life. Nancy, what's your perspective on this?
Well, my perspective is kind of in agreement with you that our ability to begin to even know that we have the possibility of being on a healing journey starts with self-awareness, like maybe literally falling down the stairs, or just having an unrelenting health issue or thought pattern, is to start to ask yourself, why is this recurring, or why do I have the same emotional fabric with this comment or this person, or why do I always get sick in my bad cough or chest, or so start to get more curious, rather than saying, oh, I just was born with weak immunity, or I just have this type, that's just my personality. But start to go deeper, get curious about why this pattern is in your life, whether it's an emotional or physical or a combination, instead of looking for an external covering for that. I know for me, that began my journey. I didn't know what I needed. All I knew was I felt off. Now, I had done no work in mindfulness training or the practice of yoga. I think I was just starting to become I knew that something was going on. Maybe that, again, I was getting these messages that I was ignoring, that I was hitting a wall. I was always having the same emotional or physical thought or sensation. And somewhere deep in my inner recesses was, don't you want to find out? Don't you want to get past this and find another way to live? I mean, is this it? Is this what you want to have your life be? Always angry or frustrated or blaming, or, half glass empty. So for me, I had to pick up the pieces and seek help, even though I didn't know what I was going to do or what really was. But I was curious and interested enough to know that the way I was living now wasn't doing it for me. I knew there was, I didn't know, but I knew there had to be something else out there. So it's our own answering our own inner call. We've been through the good, the bad, and the, what, not good or bad, but through those experiences that occur.
Right. Yeah. Well, okay, that's beautiful. And I think that leads us to the big question, well, at least I think it's a big question, about how can we go about the process of actually digging down and unlocking those cellular memories. Now, I know that all of us have our own ideas about how to do that. So, Sarah, I'd like to start with you on this one. Would you share your perspective on how you would encourage people to unlock those cellular memories?
Go back to name. Go back to your name. And I'm not saying you've got to tone it. If you can, obviously, because it's toning, you may call that singing, except for the fact that for me, it is very definitely toning. There is a different energy. But start by just speaking your name to yourself. Because one of the reasons I feel it is so different when I work with people's name is they are not being asked to do anything. They are not in trouble, because so many of us, our memory, our feeling around our name is, why haven't you done this? Why haven't you done that? Will you go and do this? Will you go and do that? And you're getting in trouble. Every time your name is used, there is a demand or there's a problem. And so that's the feeling every time. There are going to be times when your name is said with so much love, but we're human beings and we are very good at remembering the negative rather than latching on to the positive and the love.
Right.
So it is very important that when you are speaking your name to yourself, you aren't, oh, Sarah, you are a silly idiot. What did you do that for? What's the saying? Be careful how you speak to yourself, you're listening.
Mm-hmm.
So when you are just speaking your name and finding the courage maybe to tone your name and actually put some vocal energy and sound behind it, not just the spoken sound, and know that you are just doing this for yourself. You are acknowledging yourself. Because that is one of the ways I help people to reconnect with those younger aspects, therefore that cellular memory level.
Right.
I never ask people to revisit what happened, because for a lot of people that can be far too traumatic. But it's the energy, the feeling that the younger self felt around whatever it was that happened. That is to a certain degree material. It's the feeling. And if you find yourself in that position where speaking, toning, just gently being with yourself and finding that love for yourself, that acknowledging yourself brings up something, brings up a memory, a feeling. It is for the you of today to be with the you of yesterday. Words may never need to be spoken. The younger self is looking to be acknowledged and to feel loved. And that is and cellular memories will, when it's ready, they will make themselves known to you.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you for that. Christy.
So I think that, at first, a lot of people may think, life is happening to them, and, we can feel victim. And certainly when we are children, we lack power to be able to process some of the things that happen to us. But ultimately, if we understand that things are also happening for us, for our soul's evolvement, for our soul growth, then we can start to see there's power in the awarenesses. So it's really kind of like Nancy said, having that curiosity to really figure out, what's going on. I tell people that I work with physical problems, don't own anything you don't want to keep. For example, don't say, I have this disease. Because not only are you listening to what you're saying, but your body is listening to what you're saying.
Right.
So, there's that, and also when I'm doing inner child healing work, I almost see us as like a Russian nesting doll. And when we talk to ourselves in a negative way, it's not the present self that feels that the most. It's the youngest wounded child self. So for many people that have been abused, they become their own abuser as adults.
Yep.
So this vision of the child self is a great way to start to be more self-loving. But just realize that in every situation in which you feel a victim, you have an opportunity to be the victor. So, we're in this this world of polarities and dualities, the yin and the yang. So, you've got to look for that other side of the coin. It's always there.
Yeah, beautiful. Nancy, what's your perspective on this?
Well, again, I just am in such agreement with all of you, with you, Sarah and Christy and David, that we do, even if life dishes us something or we're feeling maybe caught or stuck in a season of our life, and maybe we've decided to, without knowing, identify or assume the coverage of that season as being, this is the way it is, or this is me. We have a choice to move forward from that, to be curious with compassion. And my belief is, I'm a big believer that each and every one of us has the ability to change. We're never, that really, maybe that was my learning when you've heard the adage, nobody, change is impossible. It's a struggle. It's hard. Nobody will change. You are who you are. I'm like, to me, that's just simply not true.
Right.
Of course, you're not going to change if you are unaware and don't, not looking with that awareness and love. However, if we bring our whole self to the table, we have so many beautiful healers, counselors, therapists, means and energy available to take apart what we feel has been a major, life blow or a season, and move from that. I mean, I take my own life as an example, and I know you, David, you and I have shared that how we once lived, feeling frustrated or unheard, or just, like we're not able to get out of this box. But it wasn't until we began to take ownership of that and dig deep and begin to lovingly extract that, what we thought was off limits or unknown. So that's my take on the movement and growth.
Right. Thank you. Yeah, I really like what you're all saying, and so Sarah, your idea of saying your name, what I hear in that is it's a way of bringing your awareness deep into the truth of who you are. And Christy was kind of saying a lot of the same thing. It really boils down to knowing the truth of who you really are, and being open to the fact that you're far, far more than you have imagined yourself to be up until this point. And I think, to your point, Nancy, about change, I think we're constantly changing. We're constantly changing. There's no way not to change. we may do a lot of things, like we get in front of the mirror in the morning, we comb our hair a certain way, we're trying to put things back the way they were yesterday. But that's just it's just a game we play, really. It's all it is. What I would like to recommend to people who want to unlock their cellular memories, first of all, as Sarah said, let yourself get totally present to the truth of who you are. And remember that whatever you say to yourself, that's yourself listening too. So that's a good piece of advice. But the invitation here, and I like that word, invitation. Invite your body, invite your cells. Just speak to you. Don't require it, don't demand it, don't say, hey, I want answers. Simply say, I am open to whatever message that you have for me. And if you choose to speak to me today, great. If you choose to speak to me tomorrow, great. Whatever works. But give yourself permission, because you've been spending a lot of time, remember, a lot of time beforehand in your various different forms as a child, as a teenager, and growing up. You held this stuff down for a long time, and your body now has learned to hang on to it. So now you have to reverse the process and give your body permission to let it go and to let it express. And that's really, I think, what we're talking about here. And the whole idea of giving yourself permission is a form, it's an expression of unconditional love to yourself, right? And I think Christy just wrote, ask the question and then write. Yeah, I like that idea. You can simply ask a question, but I would recommend avoiding the use of the word why, because why often suggests that there's something wrong and there's a judgment associated with it. But instead say, how can I learn from this? Or what can I gain from this experience? What message do you have for me? Questions like that are much more open, and they don't seem to expect any particular kind of answer. And that's the kind of question that you want to ask yourself. So we're almost close to our closing time here, and I just want to give everybody a chance to say some final words before we end this program today. So Sarah, I know you have to get going, so I would like to give you first shot.
All I would say is love yourself and listen to yourself. Be open. And I wouldn't necessarily use the word change. I would use the word growth. Because I know a lot of people actually find that word change to be quite a negative, as if there's something wrong with them. And there's nothing. There is nothing wrong with you.
Right.
Be aware there is nothing wrong with you. There's nothing to stop you from growing from where you are. It's your choice. But if anybody says there's anything wrong with you, don't listen. There isn't. Love yourself enough. You have to be true to yourself. And that's the most important thing. Thank you, David. Thank you for a wonderful conversation this evening, because it is evening here. And I sort of look forward to seeing you all again. Take care, folks. Bye.
Bye-bye.
So Nancy, how would you like to finish?
I would say when you are feeling triggered or in a life season that gives you struggle or resistance, get curious about that and go underneath the surface of what is happening to find a deeper truth that your heart and your intuition is wanting to share with you, to see, to reframe and just have a much more open ability to heal. So it can be so easy to get caught up in the moment with what's happening in the moment, that moment really is a nugget for deeper inquiry, growth, and learning. If we move from that and take a deep breath with love and go down through that.
Beautiful. Thank you, Nancy. And Christy, what would you like to finish with today?
So I think that what's coming to mind is this great quote by Rumi, which is spelled R-U-M-I, and that is, the wound is the place where the light enters you. So whatever you're struggling with, it's not only struggle, it's also a gateway or a portal through which you have an opportunity to expand, to become that next version of yourself once you're able to release what's no longer holding you back. And as Nancy mentioned, there are myriad coaches and partners and healers, and the four of us would love to work with anyone, but we're human beings, and we need support, and it's not weak to ask for help.
Beautiful, thank you. I would go as far as to say that asking for help is actually a very empowering statement, not only for the other person that you ask, because you're expressing a trust in what that person can offer you, but it's also empowering yourself. It's
Absolutely.
So, yeah. So don't be afraid to ask for help. You can ask any of us on this show, and we'd be more than happy to help you out. Remember, I believe that what we're here to do is to help you get more engaged with your soul and allow your soul to run more of your life instead of relying so much on just your mind, your ego mind in particular. And that's really what we're here for, is to help bring that balance back into everybody's life. So I hope you've enjoyed this show. I'd like to remind you that we keep the recordings of this on my website at yourlifemasterycoach.com. Feel free to head over there and watch any of our past episodes. And thank you for joining us today. And so thank you, Christy and Nancy, and also Sarah, who's already left. And we'll see you guys again soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you,
Bye,
everyone.
everyone.
Bye.